I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would all of you rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
Mayor Wolcott.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hall. Councilmember Biendo.
Here.
Councilmember Alton.
Here.
Councilmember Woodard. Councilmember Woodard.
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Here.
And Councilmember Villanueva is absent.
And Councilmember Villanueva has asked me to read a statement to the public. On December 30th, I underwent triple bypass surgery. If you have experienced this surgery or know someone who has, you know it is a very beneficial procedure, and I am doing fine. However, it is a major surgery and requires significant recovery time. I'm looking forward to joining Mayor Wolcott and my colleagues on the council as we start a challenging 2012. I anticipate being back in my regular council seat in 4 weeks or so, depending upon my progress. In the meantime, I'm staying current on important issues that affect our city and my constituents. Thank you all for your kind words of support these past few weeks, and I will see you soon. And so we will be seeing a blank chair. We'll be looking forward to Mr. Villanueva's returning to us at the very soonest possible. And if you would like to send him your thoughts and wishes, I'm sure you can get his address and through the clerk. So that being said, we are going to move forward in a short second to the city manager report, but I wanted to explain, as I did last week, that we are in the process of changing the order of the agenda, and so the current event reports by the council and the public forum, will be moved to the end of the meeting. And there will be a discussion about the code in relationship to that particular item further on down the line. So with that, I would open it up to the city manager.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one quick report. Actually, some good news on the financial front, if I can pass along some good news in that regard. Relative to our CDBG funding, as you know, Congress has been significantly cutting, CDBG monies for the past several years. They're actually continuing to do that. However, because of our 2010 census population numbers, going up significantly, our allocation for the city of Surprise is actually going up about 30%. So we're going to be going from $340,000, which we received this year, and we're just notified by our good friends at HUD that our allocation for next year is going to be $450,000. So we're going up another $110,000, which will be great news for the families here in Surprise that are low to moderate income, and how we can use that money to help them out. So that's it. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. Mr. City Attorney, do you have anything to report?
Not this evening, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on, we will get straight into the business of this evening, and I am looking for an action on the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull item number 7 at the request of staff to amend some of the language, and they'll bring it back next meeting.
All right. Item number 7, I believe there was a clerical error on the item number 7, so that will be pulled until the next meeting.
Madam Chair, I request that I motion for a approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. The motion has been made for the approval of the consent agenda. Would the clerk please open the board, and members, please cast your vote.
Thank you. Unanimous yes vote, Mayor.
Very good. And the clerk will read the next item.
Going on to item number 8. Consideration and action on Resolution 2012-04, a resolution authorizing the city to enter into a grant application for Water Smart grant from the United States Department of Interior Policy and Administration.
Mr. Beckley.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have before you tonight a request for your approval to submit a grant application. The grant application is involving we're applying to perform a demonstration project. It's really a creative, innovative idea that our operations plant staff has come up with. If you recall, the Vado Zone wells that were previously approved by the Bureau of Reclamation, or a grant that supported that effort, along with our funding, has been approved. It kind of put us on a list to receive updates from the Bureau of Reclamation about future grant opportunities. One opportunity was brought to our attention in late December, just last month, and it is dealing with water and energy innovative solutions. So what this is involving is to petition for grant funding from the Bureau of Reclamation to fund a project up to $300,000 of their support, financial support, along with our contribution of in-kind services. No grant, no dollars are at least anticipated at this point in time with this application. Now, what will happen is, if successful, the grant will come back to the city for our formal approval. So what you're acting upon is just authorizing the support of this application so that the Bureau of Reclamation knows that the city's serious and has discussed this with the legislative body. A little bit about this project. Vado Zone wells, as you may recall, are pumping the effluent from our wastewater system back into the ground after it's been treated to help with a recharge requirement. Now, what this will do is install a microturbine inside those Vado Zones wells, and then the turbine will generate power and convert it into energy, electrical energy, and then use that energy to provide additional power to the facility, reducing our overall energy consumption. The amount of power that in the early study that we've done, one of the installations in one well will supply enough power to power, if you were to be powering a residential home, 7 homes, the power that it would require for over a year's consumption. So we have 20 wells out there. So this is really a significant, it could be a very significant energy producer for us. Approximately 140 homes, that equivalent of energy would be realized as a result of this activity. So what the process will be is, if the council approves this application, it will be submitted to the Bureau of Reclamation. They will categorize and determine if it meets the priority of the program that this is intended for, and we'll be receiving some announcement either of our successful award or our denial, if that's the case. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Councilman Alton.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Beckley, there's no money that's going to be determined at this time that's going to be in the grant.
Pardon me?
There's no money that's going to be determined. There's no dollar amount that's going to be determined right now.
This application does not propose the use of any city dollars at this point other than in-kind services.
Okay, but looking at your supporting information, it's a match grant?
Yeah, the match would be the in-kind services. That's
already in the ground?
No. This is all new work. So that what will happen is there will be the in-kind services that the city will provide, working with an independent designer and also a pump company. The 3 partnerships are going to provide services to develop, the feasibility and also the design of this. Those are the in-kind services that I refer to that the city will not bear any direct costs for.
Other than our normal performance in the in-kind services?
The city staff time, yes.
Right. What does this do for national recognition for the city? I mean, is it something that is brand new concept? Where does that put us?
To our knowledge, this technology is not available anywhere in the valley, or as we can find anywhere in the wastewater industry. The consultant that we're using is Brown and Caldwell. They're a national company, and they too are not aware of any other facility that is using this type of technology. So it's definitely cutting edge.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Hall?
Thank you, Mayor. So $300,000 buys us 20 of these microelectric hydro units.
No, I think that will buy 3. I think it's the demonstration.
Yes.
Part.
So
Yes.
we buy 3 units for $300,000.
Well, what it is it includes the design, the analysis of where we could best use the energy on campus, and then beyond that, what's the cost of the implementation of it. So then we can determine after the 3 are in and up and running the cost-benefit analysis based on actual equipment.
Okay.
So if this is successful, then the next step would be to evaluate whether or not we want to expand this to the rest of the wells and on what conditions.
I see. Okay.
Councilman Biondo?
Thanks, Madam Chair. You've done, I'm sure, an examination of the scope of that in-kind work and the extent to which it may have some impact on your organization?
Yes, we have. Now, I should add that through this process, and this is what we saw with the Bureau of Reclamation, this is our intended level of scope, or our scope, span of scope, and also level of effort that we anticipate. Frequently, the Bureau will come back with suggested revisions, suggested meaning that if you want consideration, you need to revise your application. In that context, things may change slightly, but we're not aware of that at this point in the process.
Any other questions, members? This is an action item, and do I hear a motion?
Move to approve Resolution 2012-4.
Second.
Would the clerk please open the board? Members, cast your vote.
Unanimous yes vote, Mayor.
Thank you. And the next item, please.
Consideration and action on the city partnering with Students Against Destructive Decisions, SAD, for 2012 project graduation. Councilmember Woodard.
Councilmember Woodard, would you like to guide us through this item?
Yes. Yes. Back, I believe it was in October, we had a presentation from SAD regarding project graduation. We've been continuing, or they've been continuing to work with it. I'm a member of that committee, so when I say we, please excuse me. We have some numbers. They're very rough numbers right now. And what we're looking at approximately 1,900 graduating high school seniors from Dysart School District and a combination of the charter schools. And our intention is to provide a safe graduation night where they can go, they can have a good time. It's an all-night party. At this time, we're anticipating that it will be in the Surprise Stadium. They'll be in a safe environment. There'll be no alcohol allowed in, no drugs allowed in. Essentially, they will be in for the night. If someone does have to leave for various reasons, they will not be allowed back in. We want our graduates to enjoy the evening, let off all the steam from 12 years of work, but we want them to be safe. We don't want to have tragic accidents that can happen and have happened in the past. So that's the intent and the purpose of it. And we would like the city to partner with SAD and various other organizations as we go along in sponsoring this. So tonight, what I would like to do, maybe at this time, is ask Mark Coronado to come down and just give us some not totally locked in numbers yet, but numbers that
Estimates.
that are estimates.
Mr. Coronado.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Woodard. Mr. Woodard has discussed with us on a number of occasions the possibility of hosting this event. We believe the success of this event will really not come to reality unless our teen council gets involved at some level. Teens planning parties for teens are much more successful than gentlemen my age planning events. So we're going to need that partnership. The numbers come to us from the police chief, the fire chief, and the Parks Department. We have not had time to work with SAD as we've asked them to fill out some paperwork. They want a partnership with the Sundancers as well. They're working on that. And we believe that with the partnerships that we can put together, that the number will come down significantly, so it'll be a win-win for the community, a win-win for our city, and a win-win for the city council. So I need about 30 days, and I'll come back to the mayor and council at the direction of Mr. Hillman and present a budget, and then we can move forward if you endorse the project and ask us to move forward accordingly.
Yeah. So I would like to make a motion that we could discuss, and that would be to have the council endorse a sponsorship and instruct staff to come back within 30 days with a budget, and then we can perhaps have some discussion. So that would be my motion.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, the purpose being for discussion. Mr. Williams, I see you would like to say something.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate the item coming forward, and I appreciate Connie Lord, who's been very involved in this and very passionate about this. And it's a great idea. It's a great concept. But one of the things that we had discussed early on when we had the original workshop was going to the school district and having a conversation with them. And I did have those conversations, and there were some concerns that did come out of that. And out of those discussions, many of the schools had considered having their own, taking it in-house, holding it in a gym at Shadow Ridge, at Willow Canyon. I don't know the status of that, but some of the questions that came out of those discussions were, well, who's going to chaperone? What's the liability there? How do we ensure that students that are not drinking or doing anything prior to the event, then coming into the event without anything in hand and entering into the event? There did raise some significant questions. So in looking at that, not only the cost of the event, I would like staff to weigh safety issues, liability concerns, and the whole purpose is to ensure a safe environment for these kids, but how and having a place for them to go where they're locked in and this is a safe place to be. But there were also some concerns, and these are, maybe, side notes, but ancillary concerns, but school rivalries, and what does that do? Oh, I'll see you there, and I'll see, those are certain things that you'd want to weigh and consider to a certain degree. So I would just like to kind of understand, certainly, what is the city's liability, how we cover that, how do we ensure the safety of the kids while they're there, and just some of the questions that did come about of that were appropriate questions to ask.
Councilmember Williams, those are very valid questions, and I'm certainly comfortable that we're working collaboratively with SAD, with the school district, with our city staff at moving forward on the possible outcome of actually sponsoring an event on city property. But I think there are a number of questions that need to be asked before we take a formal action. So I'm wondering. Certainly, I think we don't need to have a formal vote to endorse moving forward. The question is, what are we going to adopt as a project without, fully vetting all of the questions that are raised by Councilman Williams? Do you have some thoughts on that?
We've not had discussions with the Dysart School District. We attempted to make contact with them, and they chose not to invite us to present anything to them. So some of these concerns that I'm hearing, John, I'm hearing for the first time.
Madam Chair, to that point.
So, you know, to ask me to respond, it's a little difficult because we just had no communications with Dysart.
And I would suggest that we need to close that loop because clearly it's an important. It's related to the graduation ceremonies, and so we do need to close that loop. And I think that's something that staff can assist us in doing in a timely manner. So I think it would be really good. It's very clear that everybody agrees with this being a wonderful concept, something that needs to be done. But I think what we need to do is we need more information, and we do need you, Mr. Coronado, to close that loop with the school district. After all, we do have a relationship with them. We want to make sure that we're not competing with anything that they have in mind. But also, if there's any way that we can collaborate with them for a more successful event. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, number one, I appreciate the initiative and the passion, Michael, for bringing this forward. And I appreciate Connie Lord's passion. It's a super organization. I'm just concerned about the school district. That's all. I think John brings up a good point that if the school district is thinking about going a different direction and they've got some concerns, and if we don't answer those concerns so that they can come together so this will be a successful event, I'm concerned about that, you know?
Okay, I understand. Perhaps John will assist me in making contact with the school district, a successful contact.
And certainly, I mean, if staff is going to address some of those, and I could certainly contact the Dysart liaison and have those conversations again. But I did share via email some of that information after our council meeting.
Great. We just want to facilitate the conversation. So, Councilman Alton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion on the table is that we endorse it and that we give it back to staff to look into everything and look at the numbers, to create the liaison with the Dysart. So I think the motion on the table is valid, and that we ought to proceed with that, and we'll see what the outcome is from the staff involvement.
Mayor, if I may, the motion on the table was technically to sponsor, not endorse. So maybe some clarification in between sponsor and endorse.
Okay.
And I think that is a concern. I mean, endorsing is one thing, sponsoring is quite another, and quite frankly, either whether it's sponsoring or endorsing, we don't even know what we're endorsing yet. It's a concept. It's still at its concept phase. And so we want to make sure that it's clear on what it is that we're acting on, Mr. Woodard. So could you help us with that?
Yes, I'll attempt to get that information.
Okay. Would you care to change your motion?
Yes, I'd like to perhaps table this until
Okay.
future.
Second.
Okay. Thank you for that. And this has been a good conversation. And Mr. Coronado, we're looking forward to your full report.
Yes, ma'am.
And just for clarification, we'll do that within 30 days.
Perfect.
Bring it right back in within 30 days.
Thank you.
Expect to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Next item.
Consideration and possible action regarding the City Council policies and procedures.
Mr. Bailey?
Mayor and Council, the past councils have adopted some City Council policies and procedures, and they provide a mechanism by which they would be approved by new sitting councils. And because there's a new sitting council, it's also an opportunity to take a look at the policies and procedures. And so before I present it to the council, I would like to extend the opportunity to the council to take a look at them, making myself available to the council before it's brought before you to make to adopt them. There is the need for some changes, in my opinion, and I think it would be beneficial to sit down either with a few of you as a subcommittee before I bring it back, and I would ask that you would consider that request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey, and I concur. I think that this is something that definitely needs review, and it's always healthy to do that at the beginning of a new sitting council. And so I'm looking for input from council members here at the table. Councilman Williams.
Are we looking for input to form a subcommittee or input on the actual?
I see you wanted to say something.
I hit that on accident. I'm sorry.
Right.
Thought we were going down the line. But I would, if I could provide input, I would nominate Councilmember Woodard to chair a subcommittee because he's been very passionate about the subject.
I quite agree, and it has been my desire to create a subcommittee, and I think Councilman Woodard would make a great chair. And so I'm looking for volunteers. I think I've heard a few, so would anybody else like to serve? We'd like 2 more.
I would like to serve.
Councilman Alton? Councilman Biondo? I'll be happy to. All right. All right, perfect. Then we have our subcommittee, and we will look forward to your report. Thank you very much. Now, there is, pardon me. Could I just say something? Yes, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael, is there a way that, this is just a detail, but could you, for the subcommittee's benefit, maybe redline the changes that were made recently to council and policy and procedure so it reminds us what it was, and blue line what you recommend? Or something, because it's 37 pages long.
Right, Vice Mayor, and I guess I think what will probably be the first step is with the committee to sit down, and one of the challenges that we've had with these is that these, a fair statement would be to say that the individual that was maintaining them is no longer with the city, and so so to the extent that we can look and see what the last draft was, but I'm not sure that would accurately reflect it. However, in terms of feedback, I can provide a red line copy of where I believe that there needs to be some changes due to some conflict, and we can provide that to the committee, and as the committee progresses and reports back, provides that to the council at large. But I'm going to defer to the committee, but that would be my recommendation.
And that will certainly be the most useful way for us to understand exactly how things are changing and the recommendation of the subcommittee. So I very much appreciate that. I do see that there has been a request from the public to speak on this item.
Yes, we have Bill Lipscomb.
All right. Welcome to the table.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm privileged to be speaking before you this evening on this particular item on consideration of the council policy and procedures. I know this has been a concern of Mr. Woodard, Councilman Woodard, for a year plus. I think other members of the council, I think it's somewhat overdue that you had an opportunity to review all the items in the policy and procedures. I noticed tonight that there is an endeavor here to change the call to the public, and I'd like to speak about that real quick here, if I may. My earlier years being here at the microphone with members of the public, we used to have to stick around council meetings until the end of the meeting, and then we came forward when we were introduced to the microphone, and then we said what we'd like to convey to our elected officials. By that time, we felt that there was a disconnect between the listening ears of the council and the general public, many of whom have already gone home. So during those earlier years, Madam Mayor, there was a drive by the general public to change the agenda item to allow the public to come forward at the beginning of the meeting to speak before our elected representatives on issues that are not on the agenda again, but simply to convey whatever we felt we'd like to convey. Because I'd say the previous lineup, we felt, and again, a perception was disrespected, kick to the back of the bus concept. And then we were brought forward to speak at the earlier stage of the meeting, which is what we enjoy today. I noticed this evening that prior to this agenda being approved by the council, it was already in effect because the call to the public was changed and some of the agenda item for the district citywide current events was changed as well. That should have been, whatever was on the agenda, I think should have been on the agenda, and it should have been enacted the way it was presented tonight until item 10 came up for your approval. So I would seriously and sincerely ask that you reflect upon this, because it's very important for the perception of the public here to know that you welcome our voice, and that if we come to speak before you at the podium, that you will invite us at the earlier stage of the meeting. And so those that have no issues on the current agenda may go ahead and go home, other than stick around until whatever length of time may be on the agenda, and then they come forward. So I would sincerely ask that you reflect upon that, and that you keep the call to the public at the beginning of the meeting, if you would, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lipscomb, and I will add that this is one of the reasons why we do need to look at the policies and procedures, is because there is conflict between code and the policies and procedures. And in fact, essentially on the fly, the mayor and council are allowed to, as envisioned by the policies and procedures, to change the order of the agenda on the fly, which is exactly what we did this evening. However, in order to change the order of the agenda, which is written in code, we are endeavoring to do that at a later agenda item, which I'm sure you'll be back to the microphone to talk about that again. And so that is the time at which that I will discuss why we are changing the agenda, and I appreciate your patience. That being said, we have appointed a subcommittee, and we have no action to take on this item other than the direction of the subcommittee to come back to us with a full report. Moving forward, we are moving on to the regular agenda item, which do call for a public hearing, and the first item on the agenda is item 11.
Consideration and action on ordinance 2012-04, an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the Surprise Municipal Code regarding the order of business.
And me being the one that was calling for this particular agenda item, I will now attempt to explain to you why I think it makes rational sense that we move the items on the agenda to the recommended agenda order. I do truly appreciate Mr. Lipscomb's input on this particular item, and recognize that it is considered to some an inconvenience to have to wait through all the other items that are on the agenda. But let's turn that around. If you think about it, the people who have perhaps waited months to be a part of the process of the City Council have perhaps paid a fee for a license and are here to be approved, have engaged the city in the processes that move through the legal process of the City Council, and have petitioned their council for an action, perhaps have waited months, not an hour or two, but literally months. And in fact, each and every council meeting, on these agendized items, these are noticed in the public, so the public knows exactly what we are going to be speaking about in that noticed item. And so I view that those are the most top priority items that we need to get. This is the people's business that we are here before us. Every member of the city deserves the right to petition their council for action. And that is precisely what we need to get to and prioritize those items. They have perhaps been waiting for months for an action by their mayor and council. And so it has been my viewpoint that these are a top priority item. Now, in terms of wishing not to be indispensed for the length of the meeting, I would argue that there's only a handful of people that typically come before the council and use the open forum process. And typically they stay for the entire meeting. But we certainly have given them an opportunity to speak on each and every item as it is presented that has been noticed. They have that opportunity to speak and make their voices heard on those individual items. But the open forum process is to bring up a totally different item, not something that has been noticed. And therefore, it's pretty important that the public have the opportunity to focus on the noticed items first, and that the process be respected, and people's time be respected. So I feel very strongly that those items ought to be forwarded to the top of the agenda, those duly noticed items. And then I've also requested that the general reports of our council also be put down to the bottom, because there are a number of people who have petitioned their council and petitioned their mayor for an action item that don't particularly want to listen to how many different dinners we've attended and how many different places that we wish to go to. And so it has been my recommendation that we respect and value the time of those constituents who have petitioned us for action. Mm-hmm. That's the reasoning behind my request to change up the agenda, and I'm certain that one thing that the public will find is that this council is committed to doing more public outreach so that we can truly engage in a discussion with members of the community, and not just a 4-minute dialogue, 4-minute monologue. It's more important that we engage in discussion and we can truly get into a point and counterpoint discussion in an environment like at the town hall meetings that we've already begun. So that's the reasoning behind this agenda item, and I would welcome any questions from members of the council and would look for an action.
Madam Chair,
Councilman Williams.
I appreciate the presentation. I understand the logic now, and I agree with it. The one thing that I'd like to see with all this is then take the call to public. Since there's nothing left except for our presentations and our future agenda items, remove the time limit. Let folks that are sticking around listening to city business, give them the time to speak within an appropriate time manner. Just remove the time limit, that formality of that time limit, and give them that opportunity. Outside of that, I think it works. I think it's effective.
Councilman Alton.
I agree with you, Councilman Williams. However, there should be a time limit. Not necessarily the 4 minutes, but at the discretion of the mayor. We don't want to have filibustering going on. We don't need to have somebody go on for 20 minutes on the same subject. I think we can get it. We can understand what they're trying to bring about. But the time frame is an issue with me. Yeah, thank you.
Councilman Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. For many years, I sat out there. For many years, many of those years, I sat out there until the ending of the meeting. I hesitate to move this to the back. We don't have a large number of people that come before us to speak on a weekly basis. When we have a hot button item, are we going to have those people wait until the end of the meeting, or do we bring it forward so that they can speak? We have disabled people. We have people that come to bring their children to watch them speak, or whatever the whatever the cause is. And to have them maybe have to stay until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, I'm not comfortable with. So I just would like to express my feelings on it. We don't have that many. If we have 3 or 4, we're looking at 9, 12, maybe at the max 15 people if they're speaking for 3 minutes. If they're going to go for 4 minutes, which we often do allow the extension, then we're looking at 15, another 19 minutes. If the council reports are moved to the end of the agenda or eliminated from the agenda, because quite often we're just talking about places we've been to this block party, we've been to this ribbon cutting or whatever. In other words, there's not a great deal of substance that's been reported in the last 8 or 9 years that I've heard. So that's my point that I'd like to make.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Biondo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've tried to weigh this really carefully because obviously there are pros and cons, both positions. I too understand the logic. The public does have an opportunity, as you indicated, to speak on every agenda item that's there. So it's not as though one is shutting out public comment about agenda items, because there still will be fully that opportunity. If, in fact, we approve this, then I think we have to accept as council I think it's incumbent on us as council to increase the engagement, because I think that's the important thing, not that we sit passively and listen, you stand actively or sit actively and speak to us. That's why the town halls, I think, are so critical. That's why each of our individual meetings that we have with our constituents are so critical, because we can have full engagement in all those instances, and we really can't have, for whatever reasons, we really can't have the full engagement here. So I guess I'm coming down on the side of, I understand the logic of it. Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? One further thing is, we've heard over the years concerns from the public who the word respect is used, and honestly, that's our goal: is to respect the process, respecting those members of our city, our citizens, our businesses, who have petitioned their council for an action. That is the primary reason why we're here on Tuesday nights at 6 o'clock. And so that is, I think it's extremely important that we demonstrate that respect by prioritizing those items that have been duly noticed to the public, that those are the items before us on an individual evening. In terms of public engagement, Councilman Biondo, you're absolutely correct, and I've made that very clear that I am encouraging this council to really step up the game of public engagement. And that's one of the reasons why when you listen to a frustration that's at this council dais, oftentimes what you'll hear is, well, not only do I not feel respected, but you won't answer my question. Well, from this format, we can't really engage in a dialogue. And so I think for the importance of having public engagement opportunities where we truly can have a dialogue, we need to do more as a council. And I'm committed to doing that, and I thank the councilmen who thus far have hosted those town halls before the end of the year. Councilman Hall has scheduled one for this month. And so we're going to continue to do that, to try to give more opportunities for the public to engage their council in a true dialogue in as many environments as possible. And so with that, I would appreciate your support on making this action to kind of change up the order a little bit. And I also commit to all of you and to the audience that it is my intention as the mayor to try to accommodate special needs. If, in fact, there is a hot-button item, one of the things that we're looking at in changing this ordinance is to make it permissive so that future mayors don't have to go through an ordinance change to do this kind of thing, but literally to be able to respond to the need in the room. So it's my goal to be responsive. For example, if we were to have a hot button issue and you had a room full of people with special needs, we would accommodate them. Mm-hmm. And that's our goal, is to respect those citizens who have petitioned us for their for an action. So with that, I would be looking for an action. Councilman Alton.
Thank you. I totally agree with you, Madam Chair, and we have had coffee talks every month since I've been in office. And we have had just implemented town hall meetings. And the whole idea of the town hall meetings is that the council is requested to attend, and that you have the availability of all the council at all the town hall meetings. And you also have, during our coffee talks, we have one or two other council members that come in and sit in and participate in our coffee talks. And it's also noticed as a quorum, the possible quorum. And so that provides an opportunity, a great deal of opportunity in which to dialogue and to get a discussion going to and from the council members that are in attendance. And that being said, I move to approve ordinance number 2012-04, an ordinance of the mayor and the council in the city of Surprise, Arizona, amending Chapter 2 of the Surprise Municipal Code by amending Article 2, Chapter 2-94 regarding order of business.
There being a motion and a second, is there anyone that wishes to speak on this item? Please come forward.
Yeah, Ken Wright. Good evening, Mayor, council members. After hearing this thing explained, I think this is a great way to go. Councilman Woodard's concern was addressed by the mayor in her latter remarks, and that's consistent with an earlier remark the mayor made about the flexibility in being able to change the order of business. So it's clear that that can be addressed, that particular thing. So since that's clear, I do believe that the one thing that needs to occur is there should be a time limit. I think that it depends on the subject matter. A lot of times the person cannot come here on a complex issue and address it in 4 minutes. And I think that there should be a more or less the same language is in there now. Establish a time limit, but make it flexible in that it can be extended by the president, chairperson, or a majority of the council. I think that takes care of the entire thing, and if that is not edited out of a revision, then to me that provides the flexibility for reasonable accommodation for anybody that might want to speak. However, if the latter part of what I said, the flexibility is taken out, and we end up with a rigid time limit, then that does not permit accommodation of the subject matter. So I think one of the things that needs to be looked for is the ability to control, for the council to control excessive redundancy. Another thing I would like to see on this is that some type of language that if people come and want to talk about the same thing, that there should be some accommodation that or restriction the people coming up and saying the same thing over and over again. Like if it's something from an HOA, for example, they need to have a spokesperson, in my opinion, a spokesperson or two to come and make their comments, and then it would avoid having to have so many people. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Woodard.
Yes, I'd like to respond to Mr. Wright. The ordinance itself does not contain any time frame limits. I believe that is under policies and procedures, and I'm sure that that's something that will be looked at by the subcommittee.
And I appreciate that. And I think that one thing that we also need to take into consideration is that the discretion of the chair is, it's certainly my intent to try to, again, be responsive to the needs of an individual meeting and try to accommodate those members of the audience who wish to participate. So with that, is there any further commentary? Then we will proceed to vote. Would the clerk please open the board, and members, please cast your vote.
Unanimous yes vote, Mayor.
Thank you, members. And next item.
Consideration and action on the selection of a vice mayor.
Thank you, Sherry. At this time, we are going to be taking nominations for the office of vice chair, and I believe Mr. Woodard has requested to make a motion.
Yes, I would like to place a nomination, John Williams, for the position of vice mayor.
John Williams has been nominated for the position of vice mayor. Do I hear any?
Second.
Do I hear any other nominations? Do I hear any other nominations?
Sorry,
Do I hear any other nominations? Hearing none, I close the nominations. At this time, we have the tradition is to vote by a ballot. You have a ballot in front of you, so if you would cast your vote and pass them to the attorney, and then I will have the clerk read the ballots.
By code.
Congratulations, John.
I vote for it.
Let's go. Mayor, we have a unanimous vote for John Williams to be the vice mayor.
Congratulations. And the vice mayor will be sworn in before our next meeting, which will be next week. In the meantime, Vice Mayor Hall, I would like to thank you for the service to the city that you have given us for this last year. I very much appreciate that.
I move to approve the selection of John Williams to serve as vice mayor for the term of 1 year stated in City Code Section 2-63, designation of vice mayor. Had to be done.
Second.
Motion being made and seconded. The clerk will please open the board, and members will cast their vote.
And that vote is unanimous.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the public forum, I believe, the open forum. So has there been anyone that has signed up to come to the public forum this evening?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item would actually be the reports from council members. Council members, is there anything that you would like to report?
Yes, I would. Mayor, please.
Councilmember Hall.
As the mayor pointed out, we've got a town hall meeting in District 6, so I wanted to tell you about it so you could put it on your calendar. It's the 25th of January at 6:30, and it's at the Unitarian Church on the Valley of Arts Boulevard, which is just east of 115th, and the church is actually north of the old West Valley Art Museum. You know where that is, Jim?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Everybody clear on that? Okay. Just a couple things. I went to a hotel association meeting, and we had a presentation by Stacy Pearson, who really controls the 302 funding, which is funding through the Arizona Department of Tourism, and it's allocated to cities based on room count. And she handles that, so she explained the process to the hoteliers in Surprise. Also went to a community garden committee meeting, and we've got the fence up, and we're working on having the beds built and doing the soil. So that's making really good progress. I also went to the unveiling of the mural, which is at the community garden, and it's a great mural, and I got to give Connie Whitlock some big kudos. She did a super job. And also the Dysart School kids, we did an angel tree at Sun Village. We had 93 kids. 82 of them were actually at the party. 12 of them were underage, so they had to stay at school. We delivered the gifts to the school. But I wanted to thank Jim Kramer from the Dysart School District and Dave Barber from Sun Village for pulling that off. It just went great. You can imagine the logistics of having 82 kids come in buses to a retirement committee and giving out gifts and saying, oh, by the way, you can't open them. Anyway, I also went to the Adelante Healthcare grand opening, which was, the artwork in that place is outstanding. It was really something. I went to the chamber breakfast this morning, and I want to share a few things with you. 159 new businesses joined the chamber last year. They did 37 ribbon cuttings. And just to give you an example of where we've come in that Chamber of Commerce, in 2003, 15% of the chamber was made up of surprise businesses. And in 2011, 55% is made up of surprise businesses. So anyway, good job, Dave Moss and his group, and that's all I've got, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilman Woodard?
Nothing at this time.
Councilman Williams?
Yeah, just one quick comment, and I've been out of commission for some time. As many people know, I was in the hospital for about a week, and I just want to thank staff and members of council and people that were wishing me well while I was in the hospital. I appreciate it. And now I'm back, school's back, and healthy, hopefully. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And we appreciate that as well. Councilman Alton?
Madam Mayor, nothing to report. Thank you.
Councilman Biondo?
Madam Chair, just a couple of things. I do want to reaffirm the Adelante Healthcare and the WHAM Art Gallery opening. It really is outstanding. If you have an opportunity, you might want to take advantage of that. Connie Whitlock with the WHAM organization is doing some really nice things throughout the community to try to get that sensitivity to art. And they have that whole length of that Adelante Healthcare building. You can simply walk that full corridor, and there are all these works of art along the walls there. It's really outstanding. Also, you may have seen the newspaper reports about the ribbon cutting at the original town site with that home that was, in fact, built from scratch. The efforts between the Neighborhood Stabilization Program and County Neighborhood Housing Services, it was really heartwarming as that young family moved into that house. And then lastly, the Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast celebration was held last week. Thank you.
Councilman Woodard?
Yes, it's not something to report that I did, but something we're going to do. John and I have our Council with Coffee this Saturday at 9 o'clock. It's held in the room, basically sitting right behind us here. We invite anyone from the city. It doesn't have to be just District 3 or District 5. We welcome all citizens to come in and have coffee, donuts, sit with us, and talk about your concerns and things that we can help you in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Woodard. And as Councilman Biondo mentioned, the Northwest Black History Committee did hold their annual Martin Luther King celebration in Surprise. This is, I believe, the third year in a row. And this year, the Northwest Black History Committee awarded the City of Surprise with their Diversity Award. And I was proud to be on hand for the acceptance of this award. And it's always a tremendous crowd, and it's always a very entertaining event and very moving event. And so we are very proud to have received this award, and so on behalf of the city, I accept. And I have very little else to report other than it's been one heck of a busy week, my first week on the job. And I look forward to working with all of you. I look forward to seeing our Councilman Villanueva return to us in the coming weeks. And I would like to thank also staff for all that they've done to help us kind of get up to speed. It's been described as drinking from 2 fire hoses this last week, and indeed it has been, but I couldn't have done it without the assistance of staff. So thank you, Mr. Hillman, and your staff. I truly appreciate it. And Mr. Attorney, you as well. I do appreciate that. I'd also like to put a special shout out to Mr. Salaya, wherever you are. He has been on loan from the city manager's office to try to run my schedule for the last couple of weeks, and it has been quite a challenge for him, and I'm sure he'd like to get back to his real job. So I'm looking forward to that happening soon. So with that, are there items for future agenda? Councilman Woodard.
Yeah, okay.
Oh. Forgot to turn it off.
All right, Councilman Biondo.
May I mention 3 items, Madam Chair? I know that there have been some initiatives in the way of grants. Perhaps somewhere down the way it would really be helpful for council, at least for me, perhaps in a workshop setting, to have what in essence would be a grants briefing, grants discussion, so that we can talk about potential subject areas that council may have in mind for grants, what's the coordination process for grants, how will progress reports on grants be submitted to council. Just that kind of general discussion I think would be helpful as we move into this next year. Secondly, and I know this is nearing completion, but I simply wanted to mention that the whistleblower ordinance, it's been pending, it seems, an awfully long time, and hopefully we can bring it to some resolution fairly quickly. And then lastly, it was prompted by our discussion with the SAD organization tonight as kind of an adjunct. I don't know, frankly, whether there are guidelines, policies about the general use of the stadium by organizations. I think it might be helpful to have some discussion about that. What guidelines do we have about approving or not approving if an organization comes to us and says we want to use the stadium for whatever purpose? I don't know if those exist right now. If they are, we ought to review them. If not, seems to me we ought to take a look at them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Biondo. Mr. Woodard?
Yes, in response to Councilman Biondo's question about the whistleblower, Skip and John and I are going to meet after this meeting and set up a time. I haven't had a chance to talk to John yet, but Skip and I, we would like to have it back here as a document by the prior to, if I'm correct, the second meeting in February. So that would mean like the first meeting in February, or the first workshop, whichever works. So we're going to tackle that and get it off center.
Mr. Hillman.
Yeah, just a quick update on that. When we last left the whistleblower ordinance in mid-December, the request was by council was for staff to extend and try to encourage some additional feedback from the employees. And so we gave it a 30-day process. We received 20 additional responses since that time. My recommendation is we're going to allow for one more week. We're going to have Ken try and send out an email, solicit a little bit more response, and then wrap that up next week. So per the council direction, we have been soliciting that additional feedback. We've gotten some. We're going to try and get a little bit more, and then we'll be able to report back on that feedback. So on staff side, we are working on what the council direction was. That should be wrapped up next week. We're going to extend it for one more week. But our original thought was to have that 30 days. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hillman. And as Councilman Hall, Woodard, and Williams have mentioned, that they are going to be meeting in a subcommittee environment. And this is something that we're going to try to do more often. We're going to take items such as that are mentioned at the dais in the evening and try to assign them to a subcommittee to work out the details. Assign them to a staff person that can work through those details and bring them back to the council for action in timely manner. If indeed there is no need for an action, then at the very least what we'll have is a report that there is no need for an action, and then we can move on to the next item. So that's our goal, is to try to do a little bit better job of moving items through the pipeline for action, or determining whether or not it actually needs an official action for the council.
And we'll forward those employee comments over to the subcommittee for their review, once we get them.
I appreciate that very much. Councilman Hall?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. One thing, Chris, if you could brief us real quickly, because I talked to the mayor about this, about the local vendor preference. Mm-hmm. Is that scheduled for February?
Yeah, I believe we had it in February, Sherry.
I think it's on the first work session in February.
Yep. So right now it's on the first work session. We've combined a couple of those. There was a local vendor, and I'm trying to remember what the other. There was a couple of requests that were sort of similar, to the local vendor. We sort of combined them all, and I think we had
procurement process.
Yeah, the procurement process. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Hearing none. Is there any further business? I believe not. There is no need for an executive session this evening, and so this meeting is adjourned.
If you wouldn't post it for the world to see,